Welcome to the Bad Movies Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Meyer. And alongside me today is my good friend Nemo, Mr. Elliot Craft.
Nemo, I do go by Nemo, but only from Gianni. Thank you for the introduction, though.
You're very welcome.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up, actually.
I mean, I figured why not, you know?
You're the only person that still calls me that.
It just starts off our rapport on such a positive note. Or negative,
exactly.
depending on how you feel about Finding Nemo, but who's going to feel bad about Finding Nemo?
Rarely anybody.
Exactly. All right. So, today, we're talking about Thor: The Dark World.
Yes. Oh.
Also known as MCU's only stumble.
Only big stumble.
Only, I mean, you know, you could feel however you feel about the MCU to varying degrees.
Yes.
I mean, you and I certainly do.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, for the most part, they're all critically acclaimed.
Yes. And they have very, very high highs and not that many lows.
Yeah,
but this is
the lowest low.
everyone agrees. It's like, oh,
Pretty much.
Worst movie.
For just a quick disclaimer for anyone who doesn't know, any fun.
Sorry.
For anyone who doesn't know, the MCU is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The only way you wouldn't know that is if you haven't been in the movies.
If you haven't watched TV, commercials, any sort of advertisements.
No idea.
You have walked around with drunk goggles
But
on.
I don't know what my audience is, you know? Maybe I can't imagine they haven't watched movies, but maybe they haven't. So if you didn't know that, now you know. Marvel Cinematic Universe, they've been working on these movies for years. They have
10
crafted
years. Yeah.
this whole thing. It's still going on. They just had Infinity War and Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they're gonna have Captain Marvel. They're still casting people. They're still doing new shit.
Mm-hmm.
They're pretty great. I mean,
Yeah.
it's an achievement.
Oh, it really is. It's like people want to disregard them now and think that the MCU is going to die down any day now, which who knows? It might. But I still, every time I go to see an MCU movie, I think I appreciate this so much because however many years ago, no one would have thought this was possible.
Yeah.
That you never would have been able to have a good comic book movie. And then the Nolan Dark Knight trilogy came along, and they're like, well, that's the highest high of superhero movies, which it still very much is.
True.
But no one thought that they could build some huge universe on it.
Well, even that, it's like it got away with it because people were like, it's not really a superhero movie, it's like a crime movie or whatever the hell you would say.
The biggest thing that led to almost like a universe out of that was that Joseph Gordon-Levitt, spoilers, his name was actually Robin, and everyone was like, oh my god!
You spoiled The Dark Knight Rises in my Thor: The Dark World review.
I said spoilers, but yeah, that was like the only thing. And now you watch an MCU movie, and you're like, oh my god, I counted 189 references to other MCU movies.
Yeah.
So it's kind of magical and mystical what they've done.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And as mainstream as it is to still have consistent content that people love and enjoy is just downright impressive.
Consistent asterisks
Except
down at the
for
bottom
Thor:
of the
The Dark
page.
World.
Thor: The Dark World.
But I do want to say, just a disclaimer for the people out there. I don't want to talk too much about Thor: The Dark World and how it fits into the MCU. We'll talk a little bit about it because I know you have some notes about it or whatever, and I know I have like one thing about it, which is just basically that I don't think this movie is very important. But
No.
I want to talk about this movie as it stands alone individually because I think that's how you really can review these things. And I think that with other films in the MCU, it's become increasingly harder and harder to judge them like as individual films.
Yes,
because they're just expanding on what came before it.
Yeah, they have such developed characters at this point.
Yeah,
that you don't have to.
But I do think that it's still possible for the most part, and it's definitely possible for Thor: The Dark World. So we're mostly going to just stick to just Thor: The Dark World. That being said, if for whatever reason there is a spoiler down the line or whatever, we'll warn you in advance. There's a spoiler for another movie in the MCU,
especially like Infinity War or something. That's
something crazy.
Because
like
I have a few things that kind of relate back to, but we'll get there.
Yeah. All right. So, Thor: The Dark World. Let's get into it.
Okay.
So, Thor: The Dark World is directed by Alan Taylor, written by Christopher Yost, Christopher Marcus, and Stephen McFeely, which is the worst last name. I think I came up with that name in like 6th grade when I was writing some sort of comedy or something.
Yeah, that was like my Club Penguin username or something. So interesting thing about Alan Taylor is the only MCU movie he directed. So that was
shocker.
Yeah,
I mean, he doesn't do a bad job.
No, he doesn't, because there are a few choices that are like, wow, that's good job. But the interesting thing about that is that you would think it would be the same case with the writers. However, Christopher Yost, and so Christopher Yost also helped write Thor Ragnarok, which is kind of shocking. And then Marcus and McFeely, the last names, wrote Captain America: The First Avenger,
Okay.
Civil War,
Wow.
and Infinity War.
Infinity War, sorry.
And are writing Avengers 4.
Holy shit.
So they really didn't drop off at all. So it kind of makes me look at this movie with interesting, but what went wrong? What happened that they wrote other movies that are awesome?
That is interesting.
Yeah, when I was looking at the whole list of MCU, and I was like, wait, they wrote this? Oh my god! And they wrote Infinity War? Are you kidding me? What happened? How did this happen?
Okay, all right, we'll get into it. We'll get into it. First, I just want to say, Thor: The Dark World reviews. A few of them for you here. 7.1 on IMDb. Not bad. It's actually better IMDb score than Thor: The First Thor.
Yes, which is interesting.
Weird. But then 54% Metascore. 66% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. So it's still fresh, technically, by Rotten Tomatoes scale.
It is.
Barely.
And it loses out by a whopping 1% to the Hulk movie, which is also thought to be one of the...
Yeah, one of the lessers.
Yeah, exactly. One of the lessers of the MCU. But, I mean...
Still reviewed better than this movie, though.
Exactly. I mean, and then Thor 1 is 77%, and it jumps up to mid-70s from there. So it's those two movies
are the only ones that are really dipping below.
Yeah, exactly. Everything else is in the range from 75, which is Avengers 2, Age of Ultron, to about... I mean, the highest is, for Rotten Tomatoes, is what was it? Black Panther, 97%, but that's...
I mean, that's a phenomenal movie.
Yeah, everyone loved that movie. You can't...
And then it has a B+ from Chris Stuckman. Weird.
Very weird.
I think if you watch Chris Stuckman's review, it's a very early Chris Stuckman. He's still trying to be more of an entertainer than a reviewer. I don't know if that plays into how he actually thinks about this movie. I don't know. But he enjoyed this movie. But it's a relatively divided crowd, all in all.
Yeah. I think it kind of plays into the whole thing that a lot of people that reviewed this movie and watched it it fell into that. I think it fell into that sweet spot where it wasn't good enough for people to be like, wow, awesome, obviously. And it wasn't bad enough for people to be like, yeah, this is getting a terrible 10% on Rotten Tomatoes, which some Marvel projects separately have done, and some Rotten Tomatoes scores are ruthless.
That's the thing, though. I think the fact that this movie is in the MCU is really what saved it. I think that people would be way harder on this movie if it was a standalone Thor adventure.
Yeah,
like if it was Blade or something like that.
This still would have been an amazing Marvel movie if it had came out just after the Raimi trilogy. It would have been oh, that was good.
Yeah,
that was better than Spider-Man 3.
But I mean, okay, so we're about to get into plot description, but just really quick, I just want to talk about my story with Thor: The Dark World, which is not a very interesting story, granted. But so I saw this movie when it came out, and I was like, meh. And then never thought about it again until last year when you and I were sitting together and we're like, let's rank all the MCU movies because that's what I do with my friends.
Yeah, we were just trying to do Nolan movies, DiCaprio movies. Let's do MCU now.
And so then we just ranked all the MCU movies, and you and I were both like, what's the worst one? Thor: The Dark World. And then that was the most we thought about it, and then we just moved on. And it dawned on me in that moment where I was like, okay, I remember that this is considerably not as good of a movie as the MCU movies, or at least I didn't think so at the time. But I was like, maybe if I revisit it, maybe it is better than I thought it was, or whatever the hell. And so then I was like, I'm doing this podcast, I might as well do Thor: The Dark World. Why not? So before I talk about how I actually felt about it, Nemo, will you please give us a plot description of Thor: The Dark World for all those folks who maybe just didn't get around to seeing it?
I wouldn't blame them if they didn't. So it's essentially, this is hot off of the trail of the first Avengers.
Right.
So
wait, is this the movie that released directly after the first Avengers?
No, Iron Man 3 was in between Avengers and Thor. But Iron Man 3 and Thor: The Dark World don't have anything to do with each other.
Right. And I mean, Iron Man 3 is also a very inconsequential movie in the grand scheme of things. Now that I think about it, it's
funny because Phase 2 was Iron Man 3, Thor: The Dark World, and everyone was like, where's this going?
Phase 2 ain't getting off.
Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh
so
yeah, and then they had a
very
banger after
polarizing
banger
phase.
right there. Yeah, that's crazy.
But so it was. I mean, it's very soon, and they reference the Avengers a lot. But basically, what happens is Thor is just coming out of the battle for New York against Loki, his brother, and
Loki's now locked up. Right?
He's locked up, and Thor is balancing the 9 realms because after the events of Thor 1, they destroy the Bifrost, which is the magical gateway to travel dimensions in Thor. That's what it is, how it goes. But they destroyed it, so all the 9 realms are like, oh, Asgard can't reach us, let's go crazy. So he's settling that, and then his earthly love, Jane Foster, poor Jane, she just happens to be in the middle of this.
Stumble upon
there's
biggest secret of all of Asgardians.
There's this scientific event called the Convergence, which only happens once every 5,000 years, what they say in the movie.
Yeah. Conveniently, it happens right after these disastrous events that destroyed New York.
and Jane, for some reason, goes from New Mexico to London, exactly where the Convergence is happening, where physics is going crazy. She finds a portal and discovers this thing called the Ether. Right. And the Ether is this ancient weapon.
It is Hawaiian Punch.
It's Hawaiian Punch in space.
And it just
really
sort of floats, and it like seeps into her body.
Yeah, so she contracts bad case of the Ether. and basically the dark elves who created the Ether have a connection to the Ether.
No one really knows why.
I don't know, but they have a connection to the Ether. The Ether woke them up, and they come to get her.
Okay.
And chaos ensues because she's Thor's girl, so like Thor isn't gonna let the dark elves get her.
Yeah.
So there's your conflict.
So the whole plot is just Thor's trying to save his girlfriend from Hawaiian Punch.
Hawaiian Punch is dangerous. It's a lot of sugar.
Okay, so getting this out of the way now. Spoiler warning for Thor: The Dark World.
Yes.
If for whatever reason you really want to go see it,
you
haven't seen it yet, you had a bunch of years. Who cares?
I would recommend you watch it before you listen to this because it's, again, because it falls into that apathetic region of people just being like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
You might not want to see it before you listen to this, but I highly recommend.
Just watch it casually while you play Fallout Shelter on your phone, which is what I've been doing for the past couple of days.
Totally.
I've just been watching things before Fallout Shelter.
I watched it while I was like doing dishes and like laundry. I was just like carrying my laptop around the house watching it because I was, meh. But
okay.
So full spoilers.
Spoiler warning.
Yes.
It's out there. It's in the ether now. And like I said, we'll warn you if there's any spoilers for other MCU movies, but we're going to stick mostly to this one.
Yeah.
Okay, positives first. It was tough for me to get, just full disclosure. I don't like this movie. I don't like it. But, it's not the worst movie I've ever seen by any means. And, we'll talk about everything. I was struggling. Okay, there was one really blatant positive that struck me immediately. And then after that, it was harder. But the biggest positive, I think the Loki Thor stuff is amazing.
Exactly. Loki is consistently really the best part of best or one of the best parts of every movie he's in.
Man, he's awesome.
He's so good.
Fucking great, dude. Tom Hiddleston does a bang up job, but specifically his relationship with Thor in the movie when they have scenes together, and there's a couple. There's not as many as I would have liked, but there's a couple big ones. They're all great.
The brother dynamic really is the best part of this movie. When you see them interacting after tragedy, during stressful times, or when they're
in the ship.
In the ship is amazing,
and then they're on the boat, and it's super emotional. They really do run the gambit with these two guys, and the performances do not disappoint. The script writing is at its peak at those moments.
Yeah.
They just really find this really great dichotomy. I don't know.
Yeah.
Sure.
It's a big word.
I don't fuck. Where did that one come from?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm
dichotomy.
so impressed.
All right. I don't know if it even works in this situation. But anyway,
they find
this really great dynamic. That's probably more appropriate.
That's perfect.
Okay, so they find this really great dynamic between the chaotic Loki. No one knows what he's going to do next. Is he going to betray him? And they make a couple jokes about it. And some of them land, some of them don't, but whatever. Is he going to betray them? Is he going to be faithful to this mission? how much does he actually love his brother? And then Thor, who definitely cares for his brother, feels sympathy for his brother, but just basically wants to smack him around because he's such a fucking idiot.
Exactly.
And I feel for both sides. I was understanding like both sides of the argument here. I mean, obviously it's hard to forgive Loki for what he did in Avengers and stuff like that. But at the same time, it's like, I get it. The guy is like this orphan little fuck, and he's like, wah, wah, wah. I mean, it's not, but it's more compelling than that, obviously. but
A little bit more to that, but sure, we'll take that.
But he's basically like, I mean, he's just sort of thrown into this position, it feels like. He feels like this is what he has to do.
Yeah, exactly. He is not born of Asgard.
No.
So again, the spoilers for Thor 1, if you haven't seen that, but have seen Thor the Dark World. So
Yeah.
Loki is not actually Odin's son.
Yes.
He is of Jotunheim. He is a
The
frost
giants.
giant.
Yes.
That is one of the 9 realms. Jotunheim. And I know that's not a perfect pronunciation, but
it's close
it's
enough.
close enough. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But so he's from there, and he finds that out. So he realizes that he's never had a real home, that he was raised in this place, that he's not actually Odin's son, he's not actually Thor's brother. And so Tom Hiddleston, such a great job of this. You see that there are times when he's like, God, I just want to cut all my ties from Asgard because this isn't my home. This is not where I'm from.
Yeah.
And he even references himself, I am Loki of Jotunheim at one point in the movie. But then there are times where you're like, he really does care, because he does things throughout the MCU that you're like, he does. And one of my absolute favorite moment, we'll get into that later, but all my favorite moments for this movie are pretty much consistently from Loki. And
Yeah.
it is really easy to say Tom Hiddleston does, and he is amazing, but Chris Hemsworth as well.
Chris Hemsworth does a great job.
The brother scenes wouldn't work if Chris Hemsworth wasn't matching up to Tom Hiddleston. And you also get to see, because obviously Thor Ragnarok took such a comedic turn, and Taika Waititi, such a great job.
Yeah, really.
Of that movie, you saw, okay, Chris Hemsworth can really comedically keep up.
Yeah.
And Tom Hiddleston's Loki fits in perfectly to this. You start to see the inklings of that. I think you can kind of see, okay, wait, these guys you can change the pace of the MCU formula and change the way that Thor is always thought of, like this dark, serious, and always kind of all business, and turn him into this ridiculous character that worked so well and furthered his character. Because his character doesn't really change a whole lot in the Dark World. It changes in Thor 1 from, just happy-go-lucky, just gonna smash people with my hammer, to like, oh, I have responsibilities. And in Avengers 1, he kind of realizes that as well.
It's more about like learning that you can trust other people.
Yeah, exactly.
But this one, they try to tell us as an audience that he goes through some sort of arc. They try to say at the end with that scene with his dad, who is Loki. However the fuck that happened.
And he tries to hand him Mjolnir, which is like, wait, what? Just because you're not going to be king, you don't get Mjolnir, but you
already had it.
You already had it.
But anyway, they try to tell us as an audience that Thor has grown to like accept his circumstances as like a man or something.
As protector?
Maybe something. I don't know. He was already protected.
Exactly.
So like, it doesn't really. It's very vague, and he just kind of comes upon the decision to like say this out of nowhere, I guess. Yeah. And he like, but so they're like, that's an arc, and I'm like, nah, I don't know. But anyway, but it's like, but the point of the matter is, consistently throughout all of the MCU, Loki, Thor dynamic, awesome.
Always on point.
Always awesome.
Yeah, it always works.
Even when it overstays its welcome. And this is the movie where it overstayed its welcome. Like, oh, wait, I can tell you the fucking moment, but we'll get to that in the negatives.
Yeah.
For now, leaving it at this, they're great.
Yeah.
They are awesome. Performances from them.
There are also like
great.
small positives for me that, obviously that's like the big one.
Yeah.
Is that throughout this movie, I knew I could depend on that. But like some small positives, there are some moments that like I love watching movies for, there are a lot of little things that please me when I'm watching movies. Like there's a great shot of Thor is traveling through the Bifrost, and it's like this shot of it's a bunch of rainbow colors moving, and it looks really cool. And then the shot transforms into the Rainbow Bridge and moves up to Asgard, and it's like really cool. It's this great shot. And
I had that written as well. Actually, I love the Rainbow Road.
Yeah,
I think it looks really vibrant and alive in this movie.
It really places you in Asgard as well, because in the first movie it's kind of like, oh, Asgard is just this perfect place. Okay.
Yeah, right.
And like it's okay.
Are
it's
there
all
people
gold,
living
all
there?
gold.
Like, who cares?
Do they have an army, or is it just like a palace? I don't know. But there, it's like, oh, you kind of see what it's like down on the streets or something like that, or at a tavern.
Yeah,
pub?
and it's just
Drinkery?
glimpses, but you do feel like, okay, Asgard is a place.
This is
and it looks stunning. It really does look.
Also, the costumes are, I think, pretty consistently cool. Especially just, I mean, obviously the green and red dynamic of Thor and Loki, which
mad cool.
Again, like that's the center positive of this
Anthony
movie.
Hopkins with a beard and an eye patch, sign me up.
Go for it.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's just good shit.
There was one moment with the costumes that I thought was interesting is you see Frigga, Odin's wife, is wearing just like green character shoes. Which I thought was interesting. I was like, I'll roll with it because it's just a quick shot. But yeah, I mean, there are positives to this movie, and there's also, I mean, a really cool moment of again seeing Asgard because I love mythology and I love studying it. You see Yggdrasil, which is the tree that connects all 9 realms, and it's kind of just casually. Like, I feel like, I mean, again, they kind of shoehorned it in there, as like, oh, Odin's going to explain what the ether is in this scene, but then you just see it, and it's still cool. Yeah, it's kind of like, we are in Asgard. This is a place. It's not just this giant palace and a throne room.
I mean, maybe not as captivating as the new God of War video game, which if you're a video gamer and you haven't played that, get on it.
Go for it.
But it's still very cool to like see those set pieces.
Yeah.
I like all the little nods to like the other realms. Like I eat that shit up, and I'm not even like a huge mythology guy. I'm very fascinated by it. Maybe one day. But for what I do know, my limited knowledge of it, mostly from God of War, it was satisfying to see these other things, like at least being mentioned, like just little like Easter eggs for like people that do enjoy that shit.
It also features, I think, maybe the best cameo of any character in any MCU movie. Steve Rogers, Captain America.
I actually have an issue with that cameo.
You have an issue with that cameo?
I do. I think it's very funny. What my problem is that, so right before that happens, so basically, for those of you who don't know, what happens is Loki and Thor are walking together. Loki starts like shape-shifting into a bunch of different people or whatever, just to kind of fuck with Thor.
Yeah.
And he changes Thor once, and then he changes himself once, and then he changes into Steve Rogers or whatever, and then that's when you get Chris Evans' cameo. My problem with it is that they change literally like 3 times before that, and they have the same voices. But when they change to Steve Rogers, it's Chris Evans' voice.
True. Okay.
Why?
True.
Makes no sense. It makes no sense at all.
I'll still put it aside because also Chris Evans is just he does such a good job like being a campy Captain America and like he has
his best cameo.
Like, do you want to talk about? Do you want to have a riveting discussion about truth? And he goes, God bless America. Like I genuinely wasn't expecting that because I haven't seen this movie. Okay, so the first time I saw this movie was when it came out.
Yeah,
and so the funny thing about that is that I was seeing someone at the time in high school, and we were like, oh yeah, let's go see this movie. So I didn't really like watch all the movie when I went to go see it because I was like,
I see what you're saying.
On a date, so I didn't really remember it, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cool because I kind of spaced out,
smooching it up.
No.
It's like that Seinfeld episode. Where
exactly.
They're supposed to watch Schindler's List. It's like, how did you feel about the little girl being the only thing in color? And he was like, yeah, it's great.
Oh, it was great. So that was me until it came on TV like a couple years after it was released, and I was like, yeah, I'll watch this. I remember it being good, and I was just thoroughly disappointed. I was like, man, that sucked. and then of course back to when we ranked the movies, we were both like, yeah, okay, this is last.
I got one more positive for you. I think that the climax action set piece, like as just like a piece of chaos, is super cool.
Yes, the transporting between like the fight with Malekith when they're like kind of transporting all over the place.
Yeah,
that is very cool. I think they were a little timid in what they could have done in terms of ridiculousness because I mean they only transport between like Earth and the Dark Realm. They could have gone to a couple really interesting places or like done some crazy stuff. But then there's also there's a great shot of Mjolnir flying. That's like one of the coolest shots.
Well,
in the whole movie.
Like through space.
Yeah, when it's flying through space and then Thor teleports back to Earth and it comes flying back down and it flies up and shatters all the windows on the building.
That's super
like that.
Cool,
yeah, that's like that was pretty riveting.
Yeah. I just think that like for what they did with it, I thought it was like really cool. I was like, man, this is cool chaos. Like following it all is really fascinating.
Yeah,
and
you feel like you're transporting with them.
It's the closest you get to like that like white knuckled feeling in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. You can't keep track of it at the same rate that the characters are because they're just as blown away as you are. So you're like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Like, I don't know.
I mean, that being said, they did set the bar pretty low with the action sequences in this movie. I mean, it's just like, it's basically just punching and then
pushing and
yeah, there's not really a whole lot of like.
And Malekith
craziness.
is really
the
big.
The coolest action thing that happens before this is like a 2-second moment when Thor smashes a rock thing.
That is pretty cool. That is pretty cool.
Yeah, but although that was so quick, it's like, okay, cool.
That was in the trailer, so that was kind of ruined.
Yeah, right. Like
that would have been like such a highlight if I didn't know that was coming, because there's such a good build up. Like in the trailer, it just kind of happens. It's really quick, but in the movie, there's like a whole build up of this giant Cronin walking up, and Thor just whips Mjolnir, smacks him in the face, and he blows up. And that's it. But in the trailer, it was a very abbreviated version. So in the movie, when it took a lot of time to build up to that moment, I was like, well, I know what's going to happen. Like they were building up, like he took so long to walk up, and then he threw like screamed in Thor's face like 3 times.
Yeah,
it's
Thor ridiculous.
Thor's like, oh, accept your surrender, which is like, ha ha ha. And then I'm like, well, I know he's just going to destroy him into a bunch of rocks. He's going to literally kill this rock creature.
It reminded me of like a not as intense. That moment from Troy, like the opening scene of Troy. Did you ever see Troy?
I have not.
I'm gonna talk about it one of these days.
Okay.
On this podcast probably, because it's a fucking great movie.
It makes me think of the Indiana Jones like in this.
Oh yeah,
with
the
sword in the thing. Yeah, that's copied multiple times.
This is another great example of that.
And this is another. Yeah, it does work, but it's still kind of like a lot of the things in this movie were just. A couple key choices by the director could have saved it, but then they didn't. Like that's the thing about this movie. I feel like one of the things I realized watching through it, I was like, man, if the director had changed just this and this, like a couple small things, it could have really helped this scene. But then he didn't do it for so many small choices throughout the movie that it really ended up building up and being like, okay, this dude's just not going to make the right decision for what the movie needs.
Yeah. I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying. And with that, perfect segue, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the negatives of this movie.
The negatives.
I got a lot.
I do too.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of notes.
I'm gonna start easy. The villain's horrible.
It's terrible.
Okay, Christopher Eccleston. Incredible actor.
Oh, for sure.
I don't know why the hell they would waste him on this.
Did he read the script before
why
he
would
signed
he
up?
agree to do it? I mean, I guess just the exposure is nice.
Or maybe maybe he was just like, you know what? Sure, I'll speak 20 words, 5 of which are the same, and get a huge paycheck.
Seriously,
it's all like, I will destroy Asgard.
That's all he fucking does.
That's it.
This guy is like, first of all, like put aside the fact that he's just dull as a box of rocks. Okay.
Yeah.
This guy. What does he even want? Why does he want it?
Darkness.
What is he gonna do with it? He wants
darkness.
He's like, I'm gonna use Hawaiian Punch to put darkness on the world.
He wants darkness because he hates light. He's secretly a vampire.
Fuck in the world that means. It doesn't mean anything.
It starts off on the wrong foot because the movie opens up with narration, and it's like Anthony Hopkins narration. So I'm like, okay. And whatever, and they're narrating this fight between the Dark Elves and the Asgardians.
They're trying so hard to do the intro to Lord of the Rings: Fellowship of the Ring.
Exactly,
but
5,000
not
years
nearly
ago.
as cool.
And it's like, and he kind of says, "Oh, and Malekith, the most ruthless of the Dark Elves," and I'm like, I'm still waiting for this reason. Oh, why was he fighting Asgard?
Never happens.
Oh, where did the Ether come? Is the Ether their weapon? Did they build it? Did they find it? And it's just. Nothing, and then
I mean, it's another fault I have written down here, but I'll just skip to it now because you were already touching upon it a little bit. The amount of exposition that's in this movie, it would be nice if I actually fucking knew something.
Exactly. You think that with all this exposition, we would be in.
They tell you so much. They literally like sit you down on at least like 3 separate occasions and are like, "This is this, and this is this, and this is this,"
things, but you're still not.
And
clear.
I still am like, but wait, you haven't answered the most obvious questions.
Yeah,
you haven't answered why the fuck this thing even exists in the first place. What does it do? It's just a gelatinous mass that looks like Hawaiian Punch, and I'll never get tired of calling it Hawaiian Punch because it looks that stupid. I don't understand what it is. It's just blood.
It gets way more confusing, especially because there's a scene where Odin goes to explain it, and I'm like, okay, here we go. Here's
now
where we get the explanation.
Now we're getting down to the nitty-gritty.
And
he gives me no more information. He just tells me what he already told me.
He's like, well, there are artifacts that predate the universe itself. Some of them are stones. This one is not. That's it. And we're just like, okay,
cool, tight.
Awesome.
All right.
And maybe it would help if we knew, because at that point we kind of knew what the Infinity Stones were. I think people. This is bigger MCU spoilers. Is that the whole build up all of this work for the MCU is to get 6 Infinity Stones into the hands of Thanos. That was the whole buildup, and they're splattered in through movies. Captain America 1 had one of them. Avengers had one.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy, the next movie, or the 2 movies from Thor: The Dark World had one.
Which they actually talk about in the end credits.
Yes, exactly. That is part of the end credit scene, is the kind of clue into the Infinity Stones. But it's still confusing because it's like, oh, this confirms that for the eagle-eyed fans, it's like, oh, this confirms that the stones, it's the Infinity Stones. But wait, is the either not one of them? Is the either one of them because he talks about them in the same sentence? What?
Who gives a shit?
Exactly.
That's what I have to say.
You don't, and you just
I don't.
It's not clear enough to care. Like, you could care about it if maybe it was like, and this also gets into the motives of the villain. Why? What are you doing?
Why?
Like, what?
What is the connection he has to it? Also,
Like, is there a reason that he hates everything and light?
Okay, so from my knowledge of, I guess, Dungeons and Dragons and Dark Elves, they like the dark, so maybe that's why he wants to bring about darkness.
Maybe. So,
but even still, it's like, okay, but what is the reason for fighting these other people? Like,
exactly.
Why can't you just come up to them and be like, hey, can I have some darkness? And they'll be like, yeah, sure, and then call it a fucking day. You don't need Hawaiian Punch.
Do you have an open cave maybe that we can go live, or
Jesus
just a
Christ.
giant umbrella that we could live under? But also, I mean, it's just, it's really, really frustrating. It's really frustrating because I wanted to be invested in it
so badly.
But it misses on every turn. And right when you think, okay, and here's the thing, bad villains that's what every person wants to say is the consistently bad thing about the MCU, which isn't 100% true, but more movies than not have kind of a lackluster villain. And that was kind of the plague of the MCU for about 5 movies there.
Yeah, and this is definitely, I think, the worst case of it.
But then you can also look at Guardians of the Galaxy. Pretty forgettable villain. Pretty questionable
Ronan,
motives. Yeah. Ronan the Accuser. Like, he's a Kree fanatic. Boom, that's it.
That's it.
But the rest of the movie you invest in so heavily. And this is where I think Thor really, really trips up. Is that it doesn't give you enough to invest in the Thor and Loki storyline. It doesn't give you enough to invest into the Thor and Jane Foster storyline. Because
we'll talk about that.
Who really cares about Jane Foster? And then there's the whole like, oh, well, Lady Sif has a crush on Thor, but
they talk about it once, and that's it.
What? Like, she's just throwing, like, you could really go for that story.
The best red herring in this movie is they literally go out of their way to have like this like slightly slowed down medium shot of Sif looking at Jane, and then cut to Jane and like her reverse coverage looking at Lady Sif, and I'm like,
they're about to something's about to happen.
Yeah, they're gonna have a whole plot line and blah blah blah. Never once. They don't even have an interaction with each other. I don't even think they fucking spoke.
No, the only interaction that happens between them is Lady Sif, for whatever reason, in this big plan which comes in later, for Thor to rescue Loki and get him out of Asgard because they need him. He's just like, someone says, "Oh, you're not gonna be able to rescue Jane and get her out. There's guards everywhere," and he's like, "I'm not gonna be the one to rescue her," and he sends Lady Sif. Like, really, you have to send the girl that has a crush on you to save your girlfriend? Like, you couldn't pick another person. Well, but hey,
it could have had a juicy little dynamic between the two of them, but instead, all they do is exchange one kind of whippy line.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
And honestly, I forgot about the line until you just reminded me that scene exists.
Oh God, it's about.
She's like, "I'm not hungry," and she comes in. She's like, "Good."
Yeah, exactly. That's it. And there's not enough to invest in Thor's friends, because in Thor 1, they get a little bit more like, they come to rescue Thor from the sinful place of New Mexico. They try and rescue him from there, but I mean, they just kind of get tossed around by that giant thing. And then, like, in Thor Ragnarok, I mean, these are spoilers for Thor Ragnarok, they get absolutely murked by Hela.
Yeah.
Like, she just walks in and stabs off. Lady Sif is gone. We don't know where Lady Sif is, but she kills the rest of them. So they're like, maybe she was just heartbroken, so she left. Maybe she went to New Mexico. I don't know, but. So yeah, Hela kills them. She was
so offended by the
so hurt that Thor
women in this movie
exactly.
that she just dropped out.
But and I mean, they're not like, Zachary Levi is one of, I forget his name, but another one, I can't remember his name either. But the guy, he has red hair. I think he's supposed to be a dwarf, but he's an Asgardian.
But he's an Asgardian dwarf.
He's a good actor, because this is what I was waiting to bring up. He was in Dexter. He was like that. Was it the Eastern European mob boss or the Russian mob boss that like?
Oh, in fucking season 7.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and he's
awesome. That guy.
Yes, that is that guy.
Really?
And he's terrifying. Like, he's a good actor.
Yeah.
And Zachary Levi as well. We just saw the trailer for Shazam.
He looks great.
Obviously has comedic capabilities.
Well, yeah, he was great in Chuck.
Chuck, completely wasted.
Waste on this movie.
They needed to cut out one of these things. Preferably Jane Foster. But they...
Okay, let's talk about my next negative. The goddamn human stuff. That's literally what I have written down. The goddamn human stuff.
The goddamn human stuff.
Literally, like... Jane makes herself useful at the very end of this movie, and I'm like, okay,
Does she, though?
I forgive it because she's, I don't know,
it's not even her, it's Selvig
doing portals, and she's fucking
that's Eric Selvig's technology. She's supposed to be this ultra smart person, but then she just turns into this doe-eyed
that's
love
my
interest.
thing. She's a fucking moron. Okay, she's so stupid. Like she's literally like she's no common sense whatsoever, and it's like. It's so inconsistent because she's supposed to be this genius fucking scientist, and she has some things where she's like, I want to stick my quantum physics into my recton resonation chamber, whatever the fuck. And I'm like, oh wow, I guess she's a genius. And then they immediately have like a scene where Odin walks in. Clearly, he's the man in charge, and she's like, "Who do you think you are?
Who are you?"
Like, whoa,
are you
bitch.
Kidding me?
First of all, and also she has a horrible fucking first impression on all of Thor's family.
Oh, for sure.
And I do think it's kind of funny, but it's at the expense of her literally sacrificing her character's integrity. So I can't allow it. I can't forgive it. Why is she stupid?
The whole thing. So the background of the ether, which is revealed to be the Reality Stone, which I mean I wouldn't have seen coming because we'll get into the powers that are granted to her in a second. But like the whole background of that is that in order for someone to utilize that power, you have to be a creature of great intelligence. Like that was something from the comics, is that you have to be, I'm pretty sure it was the Reality Stone, or even, okay, Infinity Stones in general, you have to be awesome.
Heightened,
you have to be amazing to be able to control it. And Jane Foster is this brilliant scientist. But they just tear her down at moments where she, like, Thor shows up and all she does is like practically drool, and it's just takes away from her character being like this really strong, useful person to be like, man, if she didn't have the ether, she would not be a part of this movie at all. Although I will say that the goddamn human shit, which is I think what she wrote.
Yeah, the goddamn human stuff.
The goddamn human stuff. I mean, what's her Darcy, played by Kat Dennings.
Kat Dennings is
she's
fine, but
Kat Dennings level funny.
But she has this. Like her introduction in this movie is she literally just interrupts this date that Jane's on with this other guy.
One of my favorite scenes,
very rudely, and like just eats their bread or whatever else.
One of my favorite scenes because Chris O'Dowd is
great.
Amazing.
I didn't remember him in this movie at all, but he's awesome. But she just like inserts her way into this scene, and I was like, that's pretty much what she's doing this whole movie.
Exactly. Also, Chris O'Dowd. So she walks up to this date, I say in
quotes. This was the stupid. I already know what you're going to say.
Chris O'Dowd is like,
she's in a full coat and hat.
Scarf and hat, and Chris O'Dowd's like,
he's like, clearly the waitress.
Clearly the waitress. Like, is it chilly in this place? Are the waitresses all in like just like winter garb? Like what? It's so
never
weird.
In a million years would anyone say that to someone wearing that outfit.
The only human that I tolerate is Stellan Skarsgård as Eric Selvig, because he's...
See, but here's the thing, because the Skarsgård dynasty is amazing, and I love all the Skarsgårds. Stellan especially.
Yeah.
Stellan's incredible. Great actor. He has like a funny thing where he's like running around or whatever, and that news.
It was pretty funny. The child in me was just losing.
But here's the thing: you cut him out of this movie. Does it lose anything?
Not at all.
You could easily just rewrite it to Jane's the one coming up with this stuff.
Also, they could have saved that review. Like they say, where's Eric when they're trying to contact him, and immediately jumps to a news report about Eric, and you think they're like
twice.
You think they're like, oh, they're about to cut back, and it's going to be at a TV.
But they don't figure out.
But it's just the newscast. It's like, oh, here's where Eric is. We'll get back to that in 30 minutes. And then they come and then they see the news report about Eric.
Yeah, so they show me the newscast twice. So they could have easily just done it later in the film when it mattered, when the characters saw it.
Was he arrested or in an old folks' home? Because
both.
They say he got...
Both of them.
They say he got arrested. And
he went to like a One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest thing, where it's kind of like both, but you just kind of
exactly.
Like, okay.
And it's like, and when they pick him up, it's like he's getting picked up from prison because they have all his belongings, and for some reason they kept those giant spikes that he had why would they not like trash those or be like, hey, what are these? Which we'll also get to
or
later.
turn them into the authorities.
Yeah, exactly, because if they're an old folks' home, they wouldn't have kept them. If they were authorities, they wouldn't have given them back. and then he's like explaining, Stan Lee cameo here. Like he's explaining the divergence. Like that was the main thing for him to be in here, is because you don't want Chris Hemsworth explanation of the divergence, the convergence. My apologies. The convergence with when he does the cute little hands thing with Jane Foster, because hands are the 9 realms. That makes sense.
Not the only hands thing that's done, because I don't know if you noticed this one, but I could not get over it. I laughed out loud and rewound it and watched it again. But when Anthony Hopkins is explaining that shit in the book or whatever, he has this weird moment where it's like, it was like clearly someone gave him the direction that he has to like gesture with his hand, and he just didn't know how to do it, because he's just like, I don't remember what he said, but he's literally just like, yes. His hand just lingers out there in the open for way too long over this book, and I was like, what the fuck was that?
There were a few times you could tell, man, Anthony Hopkins was ready to not be in this movie.
Yeah.
You can kind of tell. There are some moments where I was like, oh, this is cool. Like after...
Legendary actor, but yeah.
Oh, amazing. I mean, he's, one of the top 3 movie villains of all time in Silence of the Lambs. That's like, legendary performance. Like he is that caliber of an actor. Yeah. But there are moments where I'm like, dude, you do not want to be Odin right now. You really don't. And it sucks because if you see later in Thor Ragnarok where I don't want to say matters more, but I feel really sad, and the spoilers for the further MCU in Thor Ragnarok.
It does happen in the first act, what you're about to say. So I mean, just in case anyone's like, you ruined the whole movie of Thor Ragnarok. It's like, still go watch it after he says this.
No, it happens.
This happens very early.
Yeah,
but Odin dies.
Odin dies.
Yeah, like of old age, I guess.
Yeah, because actually, one of the such a small positive thing of this movie.
Yeah,
they did a good job with the timeline, because they say that it was 5,000 years ago when the Dark Elves wanted darkness with the Hawaiian Punch, whatever they did, but 5,000 years ago. And it was Odin's father, Bor, Thor's grandfather, Bor, which is
Bor,
kind of
B-O-R, by the way.
Yeah, B-O-R.
Not spelled like a typical Bor.
But it was like 5,000 years later, which is about the lifetime of an Asgardian, which is also what they say. So that kind of lines up with Odin's death later. So I kind of saw that and I was like, okay. And then they also say Thor is, he says in I think Ragnarok, he says, I'm 1,500 years old. Which is getting up there, buddy.
Yeah.
But he it kind of lines up well. So that was one thing that I noted, and I was like, good job. Yeah. You cared about that. So should have put the care into another field, but...
I agree. But, okay, so we talked about the villain, talked about the humans.
Goddamn humans stuff.
Now all of the other bad things. This movie, there's still so many.
And, all right, we've got 2% of the list.
Oh, yeah, are we ever going to get through it? Okay, so I have written down here... I don't know which of these I want to do first. Actually, I guess they kind of tie into each other because, one of these things. So I'm going to say this one first. Okay, the Loki death. The Loki. So if you haven't seen this movie, Loki dies. Yeah, but doesn't. they immediately retcon it because they're so afraid to get rid of their best character in the MCU, and it's the worst decision because it literally ruins the only actual emotional point of the movie.
Yeah,
the only thing that they successfully delivered an emotional hit to my gut, where I was like, I mean, I wasn't crrying or anything like that, but I was like, wow, I felt that.
Yeah, exactly.
This was a really touching moment, and these two brothers have come such a long way together. Yeah, it's really tragic to see him go like this.
It could have been done so well too. The thing is, so the thing that they tried to do is that in that scene where it's the Captain America cameo, when Loki is shifting to different to look like different people. Yep. He shifts into an Asgardian soldier. And it's not for that long, but he does it later in the movie when after he dead, quote dies. You see the Asgardian soldier with a little green light on him that signifies that he's transforming or appearing differently. Yep. And I think they could have done without that. I think that was babying the audience too much. If they had just trusted that we've done it, where the guard tells Odin that Loki died, and we could have been like, wait.
But even then, so it doesn't get rid of the problem because, okay, on the one hand, it ruins that emotional moment, yes, but then it makes me ask all these questions where it's like, okay, did Odin die? Like, did he kill Odin? Like, because then he
True.
is Odin at the end. And
It takes a
it's like,
long time to know what happened to Odin.
yeah, and you still don't really get those answers in Ragnarok.
Yeah, it's
Like,
it's
Odin
pretty
just
unclear.
is sort of gone, and they're like, oh yeah, okay, and Thor just sort of knows that his brother is now Odin.
Yeah.
And there's just a lot of things that are like, oh,
Thor Ragnarok, I think, did a really great job of just kind of so quickly dealing with it, being like, oh my God, we have to
in the
sort out
best
this
way,
mess.
Yeah, and in the best way they possibly could, but it's so unfortunate that they weren't brave enough to do that, because if Loki had died, this movie would have a truly great scene that delivered.
Yeah.
But also, it would be a necessary film for people to watch in the MCU. The biggest thing is, like, I think that this movie has better reviews than it actually deserves, because a lot of people didn't see it because they were like, oh, it's inconsequential. I don't really need to see a Thor movie. I'm just going to go to the next one. I think a lot of people were like that.
Yeah, a lot of people. Honestly, the Loki death just sucks, because also, in the moment when it's revealed, it's like Odin is talking to Thor, and again, this is where they were babying the audience, where they could have been included into it. Like, they could have been included into it by the fact that Odin is like slouching sideways on the throne, and that he's holding the scepter in the throne, which like you don't see Odin do. Which, like, when I was watching, I was like, oh, I know this is Loki.
Yeah.
Good job, Anthony Hopkins, to be like, this is clearly Loki pretending to be Odin.
Yeah.
But then, as Thor, at the end of their discussion, they're walking away, he turns back to Loki and has some clever little line. Thor's not gone yet. They're in a really big hall. Thor could be like, oh, father, oh my God, Loki. Like, he could just turn around and see Loki. Like, they could have even
also,
like saved it till Ragnarok.
How much more rewarding would it have been, though, right? If they did plan this, yeah, and they never show us. They never show him changing with the green tint, and they never show Odin turn back into Loki at the end. There's just those little clues that are like, he's slouching, he has the scepter. Like,
if they had
I think that would be so rewarding, and as an MCU fan, that would have been such a cool thing to then in Ragnarok have the reveal that, oh no, Loki is alive. He was pretending to be Odin the whole time.
Yeah, that would have been
this
something.
Great moment when we were like, all collectively like, oh my God, on the Reddit,
we were right.
Yeah, people were talking about this theory.
It was like when Spider-Man shows up in the Captain America Civil War trailer.
Yes.
And that could be like the giddiness of like, oh my God, he's there. We were right. We got it. We knew that was coming. Like, yeah, that was, they could have done that better.
Yeah.
They definitely could have done that better.
In the same way that people do all these elaborate things for like how, like before Infinity War came out, for like where the Infinity Stones were, all that stuff. That united like a whole fan base. Everybody was obsessed over these videos of like, okay, where is each stone now?
Oh my God, the amount of time.
Where is it going to be? Yeah, there was so much specificity done in those things. Yeah. And this could have been one of those things. This could have been easily that theory that like unites the fan base. That's like, oh, you got to go see Thor: The Dark World so that I can talk to you about this theory that I have. Yeah, like there's so many things that if just handled better, the Loki death, even if it was just executed and they followed through on it, which I still would have been the better move. Yeah. But even if they did decide to like cover it up and do what they ended up doing, there was just so many better ways to go about it that were more respectful to us as an audience and as fans of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, true. That's another thing. Like what I kind of said earlier about how many there are, I think, choices in this movie that could have gone down a very successful road, but because of a few, just like a few choices by the director that were wrong, that built up throughout the whole movie to be really bad, that if he had made the right decision, could have made this good. Like even like the smallest of things, like they do the location cards, like the location, like the big shots of, they didn't need those, because the only place that mattered, that where they went, was like Asgard, and which London. We know. And London, which we also know. Yeah. And then they gave us title cards for Vanaheim and the Dark Realm. I can't remember the name of that.
Yeah, but they're never really there that long.
Yeah, but they're not there that long, and they don't matter. Nothing actually happens there that you need to know why they're there. Like, the location matters to what's happening in the plot.
And like it's a subtle thing. It's a subtle, like, little nitpick, but I totally get what you're saying, where it's like, that is definitely, like, an identifiable theme with the rest of this movie, where it's just like, little decisions like those where they thought they had to baby us and they
Exactly.
didn't need to.
Like they could have. The difference between that and a movie like Captain America: Civil War, like
Or
Civil
Winter
War,
Soldier.
Civil War does the title cards, but it's useful because like when there's one for and because the movie also changes locations a lot, like Thor does. So the difference is it matters. Is like you need to know when you're in Queens, and you need to know. Like when you're in Germany, like before the airport,
Well, because you
like,
got to know who's there.
Exactly,
So
you're keeping track of the
Keep
characters. Like they didn't need to hold our hand all the way through, and like I think they needed to be like the reason that Lady Sif had that moment with Jane, where like she stared daggers at her.
Yeah,
we could have put together that Lady Sif wanted to be with Thor by through the dialogue where she was like, when Thor was leaving the celebrations of a war battle, she was like, "Oh, come take a drink with me."
Yep. We didn't need that look if it wasn't going to deliver on anything
Exactly.
else.
They didn't deliver on anything. They were just like, "Oh, by the way, she likes Thor, so she doesn't like Jane." Like we knew that.
Yeah.
We can assume that she doesn't. So there were a lot of just.
It's frustrating.
Yeah, I think that there are a few like big things, like not even a few, like probably one or two. Like the villain is one of the big things in this movie that is done poorly, but a lot of just little things that just add up over time much.
I mean, okay, so another, like, I guess this is a little thing, but there's a lot of loose ends in this movie that do not get cleaned up.
True.
And as if you've only watched Thor: The Dark World or whatever and you're listening to this podcast, I can tell you the things that I'm about to bring up do not get erased. They just don't get commented on ever again. Things being like, I don't know what happened to those portals. I don't know what happened to all of the elves. There was a ton of dark elves that did not get sucked into those portals.
That
are still in London.
Did they just clean them up?
I don't know. And
what happened to the giant ice monster?
The giant ice monster.
What happened to the giant
Well, did
ice
you see the
monster?
second end credit scene? Because it actually makes it
running
worse.
around.
It's
He's
just running around
eating birds.
Why is no one doing anything about it?
No one. Also, the other thing about that end credit scene, which is another just really annoying thing, is that it's placed in that one spot where they first discover the portals. There's another little choice that I'm just like, God, you didn't have to do that. Where the whole thing is that gravity is messed up.
Yeah.
And they have a really cool shot of like the cement truck kind of like floating, or like a big truck kind of floating, which is cool. But then as they walk in, they walk by shipping containers. And the funny thing about these shipping containers, that they're set up like Stonehenge. So, and they're implying that these little kids that discovered the gravity was messed up decided to carry these giant shipping containers and be like, you know what we should do? Build it like Stonehenge. Yeah. And the fact that this brilliant scientist, Jane Foster, didn't stop and be like, huh.
It looks like Stonehenge.
I've never seen shipping containers placed like this.
Yeah, right?
This is weird.
It's so bizarre. But what happened to those kids? We'll never know. No idea.
How did
they experience some shit?
They also got arrested because Darcy calls the cops because Jane disappears for 5 hours. Also, that was another really annoying cliche of like someone disappears to like another realm and they come back. They're like, I was gone for 10 minutes.
How could
you were gone for 10 hours? Like it was that thing really, really annoys me.
My biggest problem with that scene was how horrible the police officers are. I don't know if they're actually like this in London. And if you're a listener in London, shout out to you. But also, please tell me if they actually
Let
are
us
this
know.
bad. But like the police literally don't even approach Jane. And they were only called there to see her or to find her.
And they let her walk over to Thor.
They let her. She could have left. She could have easily just
She
left.
did leave.
And then she comes back, and then they're like, "Oh, by the way, you're trespassing. We're gonna have to take you in." What?
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, bro! Why did you grab her immediately?
Also, okay, so we're led to believe that Thor gets here through the Bifrost, which is a giant beam of light.
I was gonna bring this up.
How did they not see that? He just showed up. Also, so another thing,
rainbow
the ether
in the sky.
This also could lead me into a segue about the powers of the ether, the Hawaiian punch. But it's raining intensely, which is it supposed to be because of physics or is it supposed to be because Thor's there? Could be either one.
No idea.
But the rain isn't falling on Jane.
Yes.
Because she has it was just like kind of weird. And it's like a cool shot because you kind of see it and you're like, oh my God, I noticed that.
Never really explained what was causing it.
But then when they show Thor, it's not raining on Thor either. I noticed that. It's not raining on him.
So then...
Like, what? and then when the cops touch Jane, another thing about the terrible police officers, they touch her and the ether just explodes. Blows them away.
Yeah.
And the annoying thing about this is also like, so we know now this is the Reality Stone. and I don't know if this is big spoilers for Infinity War, but we see it utilized in Infinity War by Thanos.
Yeah.
He has it on the Infinity Gauntlet. Oh, excuse me. Hold up my left hand, not my right hand.
Right.
Can't believe I just messed that one up. But so he holds it up. He uses the Reality Stone to like.
The audience of this podcast has no idea what just happened.
I know. I'm sorry.
He held up one hand, and it was the wrong hand for the Infinity Gauntlet.
Infinity Gauntlet's on the left hand.
Anyway,
I have to get that right for my sake. I would have hated myself if I didn't. But anyway, so he holds it up and he uses the Reality Stone to like
to bend reality.
To bend reality.
Leave
Like,
it at that.
he gives exposition. They're on this like deserted planet, and he uses it to show one of the characters that like he shows what it used to look like when there were people.
Yeah,
and it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And then like he turns like what is it, like missiles into bats or something.
Yep.
Like distorts reality. Like creates whatever reality he wants to live in, which is really cool. The powers of this are so awesome. But it's just energy blasts in this. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Malekith only uses
and
it.
they're inconsistent. And I mean,
exactly.
I was going to talk about this later. There's a lot of inconsistencies in this movie, but I mean, I'll bring up the rest of them in a bit because there's one more thing that sort of ties into the Loki death that I want to get to.
Yeah.
But like one of the inconsistencies is like Thor touches Jane all the time in this movie, kisses her, no
does
blowback,
the
no
ether like so? And also
It
there's a
senses if
line
it's in danger. I don't know.
There's a line where it says it's like, oh, it's defending her when they're talking about the ether and Jane. It's like it's defending her, and Thor says
like,
it's
no.
defending itself.
Yeah. Okay.
Wait, so it's okay with Thor?
Yeah. Why would it be okay with him? He's like clearly.
It's like, oh, that dude's got a red cape. I'm red. I dig him.
Yeah, I'm in. I'm all
like
in on
I'm
that.
all about
What?
Thor, but British cops I hate. Like
So
it's
weird.
very
Makes
just
no
odd. And they
sense.
could have done so many cool things with like, and they kind of touch on it because Jane has these like visions of Earth being messed up, but. And then like Malekith, I guess it kind of makes sense how he's gonna turn the whole world, just turn the lights off on the whole world. But like, it's still like they just don't flesh that out. So it's like, it's the problem, the one problem of superhero movies, the big blue beam to space, like the nondescript thing that is gonna end the world.
And this is like the biggest gaping example of that.
Exactly.
That I've seen in the MCU.
Other than
that I've seen in most superhero movies.
Maybe
like,
Justice
this is probably
League
the
with
biggest one. Yeah.
the mother boxes, those might be.
That's
That could be for a later podcast.
Oh my
though.
god, yeah, Justice League's gonna be on this podcast. God damn.
It'd be like a 3-hour one.
But okay, wait. So just well, wait, no. So we talked about the loose ends and stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean that giant ice giant is just running around. So then let's just talk about this other fucking thing. The movie just lazily breaks the structure of the world building. Like it just like for its convenience. Like Mr. Punchy Punch. I have no idea what the fuck his name is, but like the evil one with the horns that like basically
he's
kills Loki.
the Curson with a K.
Mr. Punchy Punch. Okay,
let's call him
I
Mr.
call him
Punchy
Mr.
Punch.
Punchy Punch because okay,
He punches the hell out of Thor.
He's in prison. He becomes Mr. Punchy Punch. And then to break out of prison, he just punches all of the
Punches
fucking-
the wall.
He just punches the jail and they evaporate. And I'm like, okay, well, that's oddly convenient. But what's really weird about this, right, is Mr. Punchy Punch just kills his cellmates. He just like rubs this guy's face against the fucking jail cell and like kills him.
Mr.
And
Punchy
punches
Punch,
through the thing.
He kills his cellmates by becoming Mr. Punchy Punch, but then one lived.
Right,
So then he's
but-
like, oh no, I need to kill this guy too. And then he releases the other prisoners.
Yes, and he's totally fine with
doesn't-
them. He never has an irrational moment in the rest of the movie.
Also, it is Mr. Punchy Punch because he's like he's Malekith's right-hand
Lapdog.
man,
Yeah,
lieutenant.
I don't know.
Is he still so like they act like oh, let's touch our foreheads together. You're becoming the last curse. Like, oh, it's a big sacrifice.
Yeah, they
but is
basically
he still
fuck,
him?
and
Because he
it's
like
like,
talks to him and he's like he says when he recognizes Loki later, he's like, oh, this one is an enemy of Asgard.
Yeah, Mr. Punchy
It's like,
Punch
wait,
is just like a totally normal guy who just outlandishly decided to
yeah.
kill these other people
Also,
himself for
how
no reason.
in the world did the Dark Elves lose to the armies of Asgard? Was Bor just in every way better general than Odin? Because like a handful of Dark Elves demolish Asgard.
Yeah.
Like
And they
destroy.
have guns, and Asgardians keep fighting those guns with swords. and I couldn't really
that's
figure that
also
one
a
out.
big thing. They keep doing that, but they so you know what? Let's save our gun technology for anti-aircraft guns that can't shoot giant flying knives.
But who has powers? Who doesn't? I can't figure it out.
Exactly.
Sometimes
I don't believe the Dark Elves would lose because the Asgardian army in the opening cutscene during the narration looks badass.
Yeah,
like they're doing all these flips and stuff, and I'm like, okay, you know what?
They're punching people. They're going flying. But then sometimes people will punch people in this movie, and they'll just eat it, and then they'll like punch back or whatever. Okay. But then like sometimes you punch the guy, he goes fucking flying. Exactly. Mr. Punchy Punch does it to Thor.
Also, why would they not just make an army of Mr. Punchy Punches?
Right? Because how hard is it? It wasn't that difficult.
Thor at this point, at where we are in the MCU, pretty widely believed to be probably the most powerful Avenger. Like he is stupidly strong. In Thor Ragnarok, like if you've seen a trailer, he fights the Hulk.
Yeah, he does.
The Hulk, like the one, indestructible thing. He like fist fights him and punches him and ducks punches.
Yeah.
But Mr. Punchy Punch, oh no, Mr. Punchy Punch is next level. Mr. Punchy Punch like throws Thor to the ground and like is punching him.
Mr. Punchy Punch knocks Mjolnir aside.
Mjolnir is flying at him like Thor and Mjolnir. Full-fledged flying at Mr. Punchy Punch. And Mr. Punchy Punch
I totally butchered the pronunciation of whatever the fuck that hammer is.
Thor's
hammer.
Mjolnir.
Whatever.
Also,
he knocks it aside. You can't even lift that thing.
Kat Dennings butchers it because they have the really stupid moment when they're like, when they get teleported next to each other during the final fight, they're like, Darcy, Jane. And for whatever reason, Eric Selvig, who has met this one intern once, decides to say his name. I think it's Ian. He's
another guy who could have been cut out of that movie.
Completely cut out. And then he's like, Selvig. Like, again, they just met. And then Mjolnir flies by, and of course Darcy just goes Mjolnir. That's literally what it sounds like. Mjolnir. Like she just like butchers it. I heard it and I was like, you could have done better.
So I'm at least better than the pronouncing that.
Very much better than one of the actors in the movie,
major players in the movie. But like okay, other things that just like the Heimdall. That one grinds my gears to my
Heimdall
very
could have
core.
been so awesome. Heimdall is awesome.
Here's the thing. Love Heimdall. Love Idris Elba. Okay. Yeah. All about it. But it's the perfect example of what I'm talking about where like this world has set boundaries, but then doesn't when it's convenient for this movie.
Yeah.
Because Heimdall can see anything and everyone, right? But Mr. Punchy Punch walks in with a plan to clearly fucking ruin all of Asgard.
Also, Mr. Punchy Punch makes his way into the Asgardian capture. How?
Heimdall doesn't see that guy. He's fucking, and they even make a point to like have this suspicious shot where Heimdall's like just looming over him, like looking at this guy suspiciously, and I'm like, warn somebody.
Yeah,
Tell
exactly.
Somebody.
It makes no sense how Mr. Punchy Punch got there because he's just like they're on the dark planet. They're in the dark realm, and then he's like, and supposedly the 9 realms are in peace, right?
I guess
that's the point of Thor's entrance. Also, another thing. This is a bit of a side note. A few things about this movie that are interesting. Thor's entrance in the first battle. Thor's entrance into this movie, the first time you see him, almost identical to his entrance in Infinity War. Yeah, you see the Bifrost, hammer goes around, and then he catches it, jumps up, slams on the ground, which is kind of interesting. There were a few things about this movie that were like,
it's hot. I'm about it.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, that I saw that in Infinity War, and it made me feel a lot of different ways of happiness. I'm not gonna lie, I'm aroused
by Thor all the time, especially on his entrances. They're so great. But like, okay, that is interesting.
But yeah, I like a couple things like that. Also, I mean, they do like one of the callbacks that God, I can't even remember his name, but the guy, the red hair, not dwarf Asgardian. He like does another thing callback to the Thor 1 movie where he smashes the coffee on the ground, which is like a funny moment.
Yeah. And I know,
like they pick and choose when they want to be consistent and when they don't want to be consistent.
Yeah.
And even like, how could they pay so like little? Okay, they pay attention to such small details, like when the camera is zooming in on Loki in his prison cell from another prison cell, which is supposed to be broken at this point,
I guess,
mind you, because Mr. Punchy Punch punched it. It was the cell across from Loki. Mr. Punchy Punch punched it as Mr. Punchy Punch punches things.
Yeah.
But now it's back. The cell wall's back to guard in no one for whatever reason.
Yeah, what the fuck?
But when the camera goes through it, it does like this little shimmer effect, which is cool. Like I'm like, oh, cool.
But it's broken.
but it's broken. And also, you paid attention to that. Like you were like, you know what? When the camera goes through this cell wall, you gotta do a little camera shimmer. Oh, what? Jane Foster is smart? No, camera shimmer through the jail cell wall. Like it's weird. But that also, oh man,
bro.
Also, let's talk about Frigga, Odin's wife.
Oh yeah, Renee Russo from Nightcrawler.
Were we supposed to be sad?
Hey, she was a really well built character that you really cared
fully
for.
Fleshed out. completely amazing.
But honestly, like, the thing you care the most about that death is, like, you know, seeing Loki and Thor deal with it.
It leads to the best moments of this film, but again, they just like.
But it's like, I could have lived with that more. Like, I could have. Well, okay, big issue with her death. I wasn't even going to mention this because it's like a very nitpicky thing, but like, okay, the pacing of that death is very fucking weird.
It's really odd.
He stabs her, and then you see Thor's lightning hit Malekith in slow motion. Mm-hmm. So the emotional moment has already started, but I haven't even seen Thor register it yet. And he's already like, no.
Like, why would you register that off screen? Like, you couldn't.
Yeah, it could have been such an affecting moment, but it wasn't. Because I don't even get to see him deal with it until long after it's happened.
And
long after the moment has begun, the emotional moment. It's very fucking weirdly
also,
paced
just the
moment.
whole shot is awkward when Odin is laying on the ground with her because she's really repositioned from where she dies at. So he like fully like, and he's like in full battle armor.
He
and
picked her up and then was like, oh no, I'm
too old, can't do this. Let me lay on my side on the staircase. It's just odd. Although it does lead to my single favorite moment in this movie because it's the moment when the score is the best. The really sad theme when Loki is notified.
Love that.
That is like when like
and he turns around and just like flips the
like it makes the light.
But again, what are Loki's powers? Because he could just move things.
Can he use the Force?
We won't be bothered with it. One more fucking just because I gotta bring this up because it bothered the shit out of me. Because I was like, wow, Heimdall took apart this ship like it was nothing. He jumps on the ship with a sword, stabs it like twice, and then the ship blows up. And I was like, oh wow, Heimdall's either a badass or that ship is just made
and he doesn't even use the sword for the bifrost. He doesn't use that big badass sword.
But here's the thing though, right? Because then Thor takes the same make and model, and drives that thing into literally every single column in Asgard.
He drives it through pillars.
Crashes it all over the place.
Also,
and not a single time does it even take damage.
Thank God that Asgard's architects were like, you know what we should build this like? So that weird knife-like shifts can fly perfectly through everything.
Yeah, thank God.
Because every single time the ship has an object in the way, it's just a long rectangular hole.
That's why I build all my ships like that.
And I'm like, I'm just watching and I'm like, at that point when like 3 ships were fucking it up,
yeah,
and later they're like, he could be flying right above us and we couldn't even see him, which he is. He could lay waste to Asgard. I'm like, how did you guys ever win a war? Asgardians are little bitches. Like, how did they ever win against the Dark Elves? Because A, they're bringing knives to a gunfight.
How did they win? Period. Oh, sorry, I just hit the mic. Sorry, but how did they win? Period.
Yeah, no, exactly. It just doesn't. God, it doesn't make sense. Also, it also brings up the question of, again, where's the ether from and why hadn't he? Oh God,
too many questions in this fucking movie.
There's so many questions. It raises so many questions.
Fuck, I'm sweating. I'm so frustrated. This movie.
And I think here, you want to hear the most frustrating part?
Yeah,
is that the IMDb rating, which I trust, has this at the same rating as Thor, the first one, which I thought was enjoyable.
Well, isn't Thor the first one at a 7 though? And this is a 7-1, right?
I saw it was a 7. Maybe it was a 7-1, but maybe still that close is like
that close. Like yeah,
people all around the reviews,
and I'm not even
viewers,
a huge
the
lover
directors
of the
got
first
lazy.
Thor. I really am not a huge lover of the first Thor, but like I like it.
It's way more enjoyable. It's consistent. It's a good introduction to Thor's like main arc that he has to experience throughout
He's
all his
livelier.
movies.
He's more interesting. You know what I'm saying? Like the only times that Chris Hemsworth gets to be like an interesting person is when he's with Loki in this movie. You know, like it sucks. And again, if you only watch Thor: The Dark World, you're not going to really know what I'm talking about. But like, they completely retconned this character with Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, completely.
To the point where he is now that character forevermore in the MCU. They've already shown it in Infinity War, and it's great. It's a great retcon. He is finally what I think they were trying to make him be with Thor 1. With those funny little quirks they give him, like this drink, I like it.
You know, he has some. He's had comedic talent from the beginning.
Exactly, like with this fish out of water stuff. But then they really capitalize on it in Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok just hits that character on all the right points, and I'm so glad they retconned it. But at the same time, it makes this movie even more frustrating as a fan because I'm like, it just does not fit.
Yeah,
does not fit with the rest of the MCU.
But here's the thing about this movie, and this is the bomb I was waiting to drop.
Perfect.
What I what I was talking to you about earlier.
Yeah.
Is that this might be not worrying about story, about relevance to the plot of the MCU, but in terms of the filmmaking of the MCU, might be the most important movie to them.
Because it showed them what not to do.
Because it showed them what not to do. Because let's look at the movies. The movies beforehand.
Yeah.
Are Iron Man 3 was immediately before, which is also one of the weaker ones because
I do not like
how
that movie.
Dare they?
Love Shane Black. Do not like that movie.
Yeah,
why would you ruin Mandarin like that?
Oh, what they did in the Mandarin was cruel.
I was really upset about that.
Yeah, that wasn't okay.
I'll never forgive that movie because of it. And actually, it's funny because I was I thoroughly enjoyed the first like 2 acts of that movie, and then that reveal happened, and I was like, wait, what? And I'll never forgive it.
Also, Captain America: The First Avenger, which also has a 6.9 on IMDb, which is lower than Thor: The Dark World, which is also, I think, tragic.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
And Thor and Iron Man 2 and Hulk, which are all some of the weaker movies. Like this, the MCU. At this point, we can look back and be like, okay, the first phase and like the first half of the second phase were really not good. Like Avengers, Iron Man 1.
They weren't bad. They were just finding their footing. They
were finding their footing. And now that they found their footing, I think Thor: The Dark World was the turning point. Because the weaker movies after Thor: The Dark World, Avengers 2, which I still think is a little bit hated on more than it deserves.
Yeah.
I think
I haven't revisited it since it came out.
I think it is a movie with a lot of flaws. But
I enjoyed it a lot.
I think James Spader
I never really thought
is one of the people hated Ultron. I loved Ultron. I'm sorry. I love James Spader. He does such a great job voice acting that.
Yeah.
But the other weak movies that come in after that, I mean, some people didn't like Ant-Man. I did. Some people, Doctor Strange is like an Iron Man reboot, but with psychedelics, still loved it. Some people hated on Guardians 2. I think it's the best character piece in the MCU, or one of the best character pieces in the MCU, like the most character-driven movie. Yeah, there's just really...
No, you're right. I mean, this really was like that point where they were like,
it was a turning point.
We gotta change this shit up.
And when you look at the movies before it that were weak, it was they were falling into a formula where in Iron Man 3 and Iron Man 2, one of the main flaws is Tony and Pepper. Is that it's more fleshed out than Thor and Jane Foster for sure.
Oh, for sure.
But it's still one of the kind of like you can't figure out where exactly they are, and it's kind of strange. And the villain is also Iron Man 3. What you said, I will never forget. You will never forget what they did in there.
I will never forgive
it.
And
Iron Man 2. I know the villain's name is Whiplash. That's his comic book name. What Mickey Rourke? I'm sorry for what they did.
Guy with whips.
guy with electric whips that somehow beats Iron Man.
They always, you know,
they forget Iron Man can fly.
They get these good actors for this shit, man, and then they're like, you'll just sit on the side.
Exactly. And this is the movie where the formula. Oh, I just hit my mic. Where the formula dives and just bombs
really
completely because there are not as many good parts about this movie, because even Iron Man 2, Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer is like awesome every time he's on screen, and Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., still probably the best casting decision they've made to date.
Yeah,
he's still amazing to watch in every single scene.
Fantastic.
There's still parts of that movie that you can like. Captain America: The First Avenger, still really awesome. I think like they display.
That's a movie that I've appreciated a lot more as a older.
Exactly. I think that's another really good movie. Iron Man 3, still, like you said, the first 2 acts still pretty enjoyable, and I think the comedy is a lot better placed than in Thor: The Dark World.
Oh yeah.
But once Thor: The Dark World came around, and they saw, okay, we can't keep doing this formula.
Yeah, we can't. Well, we can't have inconsequential movies in this fucking universe.
And immediately after, Captain America: Winter Soldier, which is
one of the best,
fantastic, one of the best,
and then Guardians,
right? Which is.
I think the best
still. Yeah. That was coming back to our ranking list. That's in the. We might need to revisit that with the new movies that have come out.
I agree. Yeah.
But Guardians was number 1 on our list.
Yes, and I stand by that.
And Captain America: Winter Soldier, I think, number 3 on our list, because Iron Man 1 was number 2.
Yes, yeah, we gave the nod.
But yeah, like they just, God, they
no, you're
really.
Right. You're making such a good point here.
And Guardians of the Galaxy, the forgettable villain of Ronan the Accuser. Still is the best MCU movie with a forgettable villain.
Yeah,
because of how. Oh God,
how many great characters. I mean, we could go on and on. About
we could go. Yeah, we could go on and on about.
But I mean,
this movie changed the pace of the MCU.
Yeah,
completely did. So thank you, Thor: The Dark World, for that. You sucked where
Thank you, Alan
everyone needed you to suck.
Speed round. Elliot, speed round.
Okay, speed round.
Please name me your 3 favorite characters or moments from this film. Go.
Oh god. Okay, 3 favorite characters or moments.
Moments.
Okay, I'm just gonna do 3 favorite characters and then 3 favorite moments because I can do it that quick.
Tight.
Number 1, Loki.
Easy.
Boom, done. Number 2, Thor.
Easy.
Because I mean, it's the dynamic of them. Number 3, Mr. Punchy Punch. I love watching him punchy punch things because he's amazing.
I actually want a whole spin-off now.
I want a whole Mr. Punchy Punch movie.
Just give
and
it to me.
3 favorite moments.
Yeah.
1, Loki in the cell reacting to his mother's death.
Great fucking
is just the score is like the one moment where I was like, oh wow, the music is beautifully suiting the scene. Second moment, oh geez, probably the ending fight when they start to go through the portals. That was when I was the peak excitement during the movie.
Yeah.
When I was in the most awe watching it, when I was like, okay, this is gripping. Because then it kind of was the same thing for a little bit, and also had the shot, like I said earlier, of Mjolnir flying up and shattering the windows. That was sick. That was really cool. Also, another thing, Thor Ragnarok, one of my favorite shots in that movie is following Mjolnir flying.
Yeah.
Which is, something kind of interesting about Thor the Dark World, how the entrance that he did in this movie kind of resurfaces in Infinity War, and the shots of following Mjolnir flying are so cool. That also resurfaces in Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah.
It's a couple interesting things that I noticed, but yeah, that's my second favorite moment. Third favorite moment is probably just Thor and Loki flying the ship, because
they had a lot of great
that felt like
there,
me in Shotgun with my older brother driving. Oh, is it bad if I resonate with Loki?
Because you're the demon.
Is it bad that I was always, just a little bit more devious?
You're the chaotic one.
A little bit, yeah, like the chaotic good.
Me too.
Let's bring it back to D&D. The chaotic good.
You're chaotic good.
Chaotic good, for sure.
I'm more of a chaotic neutral myself.
Chaotic neutral.
It's just sort of where I lie.
Okay.
I got a couple. These are just like, I just think this is fun to like sometimes because I write notes while I'm watching the movie.
Yeah.
And these are just a couple of them. How come Thor can touch Jane, but everyone else gets blown away by Hawaiian Punch? That was where Hawaiian Punch came from. And then I have another one that was, how come whenever Loki changes, the voices are always the same, but he changes Captain America and it's Chris Evans' voice? I already told you about that.
Also, Lady Sif with Thor's voice was the most uncomfortable part
Yeah,
of that movie.
I could not.
My least favorite moment.
Oh,
Least
I
favorite
was
moment.
like,
I was
wow,
oh, God,
I'm
that's
sweating. But this last one, I was like, Asgard loves to waste a good canoe, don't they? Everybody's dead, and they just push these canoes off the water wall.
I was watching that, and I half expected back to the Game of Thrones moment, the funeral in the Riverlands, where Edmure Tully keeps missing.
Yeah, right.
I was like, oh God, all of them are gonna miss. They're gonna miss. I was like, oh God, but no, they did that. I just had to
without a hitch.
Yeah. without. I would have paid money to see the Blackfish just stroll up in Asgard.
That'd be great.
Nail one with a fire arrow.
All right, so at its best, Thor: The Dark World is an inconsequential, serviceable superhero installment. That's literally at its best. But at its worst, this is a lazily crafted story that adds nothing to my investment in the characters. I'm going to give Thor: The Dark World a 6 out of 10.
Okay, I would say at its best, it is. I almost just said inconsequential. At its best, it is a good look at the brother dynamic that Thor and Loki have. That is consistently one of the best parts of every movie that they're in.
It's a glimpse.
I think at its
glimpse
at
of
its
that dynamic.
Best.
They really only have like 3 scenes that you're like, yeah.
Hey man, I'm trying to be positive.
2-hour movie. No, you're right.
Yeah, it is 2 hours.
No, but you're right. But those 3 scenes are worth the 6 points.
Yeah, the 2 hours was like probably 2 hours too long for this movie. But yeah, at its best, it's. I don't even know what it is. I'm trying.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to fight for it. Don't you? It's like, man.
I gotta say, at its best, it's an introduction to one of the Infinity Stones.
Wow! And the after credits too.
Exactly.
God damn.
At its also another thing. How did they get that back? Malekith dies under the ship. Did they just that?
Who gives a shit?
But yeah, loose ends.
Who gives a shit?
But at its worst, it is just it's just a lazy effort, like you said. It's lazy. It's incredibly there wasn't a whole lot of passion put into it. But my favorite moments are when there was a lot of care in it.
Yeah.
And when I saw the writers of this movie, I was like, wow, they just wrote it in 30 minutes, didn't they? They just took the first draft.
I mean, either that or it was like just too many cooks in the kitchen, which I think happens with a lot of these superhero movies. Whenever they go wrong, it's usually, I'm like, oh yeah, there's like 4 or 5 writers or whatever the hell.
Yeah, at its worst, it's just lazy is the one word. It's just lazy.
Just lazy.
Yeah.
But just the one more thing is so a lot of my viewers so far have been watching the movies of past episodes, and I thank you very much for that. That is the whole goal of the podcast, is to get around to those movies.
Oh yeah, it got me to watch it.
Yeah,
Boss Baby, and what was the first one?
Big Fat Liar.
Big Fat Liar. Yeah. Rewatch both of those.
And I hope you watch Jersey Girl too. But like, I think that it's important, moving forward, to at least mention where I'm watching these movies so that everybody can watch along. So if you want to see Thor: The Dark World, I rented it on Amazon Prime Video. I'm sure there's other outlets for it as well, but please go and rent it, watch it, or rent it and don't watch it. Just support these movies. Because movies are what makes this podcast and everybody's conversation about movies even possible.
And just because a movie is bad does not mean at all you shouldn't watch it.
Yeah.
Because you honestly might be able to learn more from a bad movie than you do from a good movie.
Absolutely.
Especially, that's when I really started to get into movies. I was watching more bad movies. I realized I was like, wow, some of my favorite movies are just not good. Like that. Wow, they do this and this and that. That's bad. And then I started watching good movies, and it makes the movie watching experience all more enjoyable.
And the conversation way more enjoyable.
Exactly. Like this has been
great.
Such a fun conversation about
Nemo. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Is there anything you want to plug? Maybe like your Twitter handle or something like that, so that people know where to find you.
Oh, geez, I haven't been on Twitter in a while, but I'm thinking about rekindling my Twitter. But that's at a later time. I'm just a student at Pace University where I met Gianni for the acting for film program.
That's right.
You can find me on social media, Elliot Craft. If you want to figure out how to spell that, I'll let the puzzle be solved by you. Maybe I'll change my handle to Nemo. I don't know.
You might as well. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Bad Movies Podcast. If you like this, you can follow us on Twitter at Bad Movies Cast. Feel free to tweet at me and give me any bad movie suggestions you'd like to see on the show. You can also follow up on Sound Pollination at soundpollination.com to keep up with us and what we're doing. We're excited to be launching a lot of cool shit in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Quick segue. Hey, do you like movies? Because boy, oh boy, have I got the fucking thing for you. We at Sound Pollination are affiliated with Atom Tickets. AtomTickets.com. Super fucking easy to navigate. I have MoviePass and I still use Atom Tickets. So if you go through our link, probably in the description below, probably on our website, probably on both, honestly, I wouldn't know at the time of recording this. I'm just going to say that they're on both of them. Okay, so anyway, if you want to buy a ticket to a movie, go to our website or go to the link below. Click on it, Atom Tickets. That's the way to go. Super easy to navigate. Like I said, I have MoviePass. I still use Atom Tickets because sometimes there's a movie that's coming out and it's going to be sold out and I got to get the ticket ahead of time and boom, I have fucking Atom Tickets. It's so easy. I can do it right from my phone. I can do it from my computer. I can do it anywhere. Atom Tickets, the most navigatable website. Also, it goes through IMDb. What the fuck are you waiting for? Use AtomTickets.com. Thank you very much. Boom.